Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Assignment questions. What is education? What is education? They are talking about it is the transmission of knowledge. It is the transmission of knowledge and skills to the younger generation. It is the transmission of knowledge and skills to the younger generation, and that is what education means. Informal education, the kind of information, the kind of education that you are getting, that you acquire in the course of day-to-day activities in family and outside in the company of others constitutes the informal setup. It is basically something that you do not have the formal education system, which is in a well-defined structure, and in formal educations, formal setups or formal systems of education. Now, talking about what is Shiksha, they say that Shiksha is basically a term which has been derived, which is the roots, which means acquisition of culture. So, when you have the acquisition of culture is what is known as Shiksha. Moving ahead to 3 basic aims of education, you may write about any 3 basic aims of education, but the main ones that they talk about are that it integrates individuals with society, moving on to it perpetuation of culture, and moving on to the increasing efficiency of individuals. All of these are the main aims of the education system. Define education. We have just talked about the definition of the education system. Basic aims of education, that is what we have discussed about right now. Briefly discuss how formal education is different from informal education. You will mention about the formal setup here, as in terms of schooling. It is, however, here you have rules and regulations and laws and rules and regulations. However, also you have you have an understanding of it being an organized structure and definite or the content of education. However, herein, if you see in the informal setup, it is informal. You do not have any formal system involved. You do not have any content of education that has to be imparted. It is done by learning, by understanding, observing within the day-to-day activities of life, and hence is known as the informal education system. Moving on to the last question, what are the 2 types of education systems? Mention the 3 important components of the formal education system. We have just talked about the informal and the formal education system being the 2 types of the education system, and we have just talked about in the previous slide only the 3 basic aspects or the major aspects of the formal education system, and hence the components of the formal education system, and hence we will be able to answer this question. I hope this concept of education is clear to all of you. I hope the whole concept of social institutions and the 7 kind of social institutions that we have talked about, starting from family, kinship, religion, political sphere, your education, all of these aspects, religion for that matter, all of this is clear to all of you, and you are able to relate to each of these aspects and relate each of these social institutions to each other as well, and obviously were able to answer the questions. So with this, I hope all of this content is clear to all of you and you had a good understanding of social institutions.